It's my fault you're here. And it's great. I mean, I'm the youngest person here. I never knew Al at Swarthmore. I never knew Al at Union. And I never even knew him at Judson. As a matter of fact, the first time I saw Christmas wrappings was in this room. They were talking about in 1981. I never even went to Judson until they did Christmas wrappings a couple of years ago. So, you know, there's a lot of this stuff I don't know. And I kind of like didn't get too close to this Al Carmines, the composer of Gertrude Stein, because I was working with Gertrude Stein's other composer, Virgil Thompson. So there's always sort of a... But then Al started the church here. I lived in the other building, and I said, God's not going to get much closer, so I better get there. And I began, and I said, Al, what do you need? And he said, I need somebody to type for me. I said, okay. So I began typing, and Al and I set a tradition I think is first in the history of the Christian church. It's about the first century Christianity, and I think Rauschenbusch was the first church not to have a program or a bulletin, but we had a playbill. And I never went out and had a beer with him, I never had a coffee with him, but I had all these little snapshots of things with Al. And one time he said, where it comes from, you never knew where this came from. He said, I really hated that one musical I wrote. I said, really? What's that about? He said, there's too much music in it. Oh, because, my fingers would bleed after I played. Can you imagine? And he was like always a devilish. And he would get on a cab to come down from 57th Street, and he'd look up, and he'd look over at the cab driver and go, have I ever had you before? And then he'd sit back and laugh. I mean, have I ever been in your cab before? And in the meantime, we're like a pinball going down 9th Avenue with a cab driver. So it was always fun with Al. And one time he got excited. He was going to go to Swarthmore. The Gay and Lesbian Club was going to present him down there, so he went down to speak. I know he'd been to Swarthmore for a number of years, and he was coming back to his alma mater to speak at the Gay and Lesbian Club. And when he came back, I said, well, how did that go, Al? So I hated it. What do you mean you hated it? He says, they're all sissies. They don't know how to fight like to be a queer. I mean, here I was with this decrepit old man, and now I'm standing next to Muhammad Ali. And I thought, you know what? When I was a kid, a teenager, getting that thing where you want to fight your father, and about that time, I saw my father pick up a pony. I don't mean a colt, I mean a pony. I didn't want to fight my father. When you think about that piece about Al saying they don't know how to fight, I really got that Al was a lot stronger than my dad. And tonight is about Al, but in a way it's also about Bob Helm. And in Chuck cleaning up Bob's stuff, he came across his master's thesis where he wrote about the poets of the civil rights movement. And it's just such a powerful piece of writing. And it's like the people that did the first sit-in, it was like the guy couldn't get served, so he came home and said, well, what are you supposed to do? He said, well, we have to sit in. And they went and they sat in. Can you imagine the strength that took? And Bob writes, it was this movement, but it was a movement of poets and philosophers. So there they would be, the first people volunteering to SNCC, talking about Tillich, Buber. Can you imagine? They were so brilliant, so strong, so powerful, that you live in amazement that to be peaceful, you have to be that strong. So if I was to make a toast to Al and to Bob, it would be to the two strongest son of bitches I ever knew. And I want to thank them for mentoring me with that.